With us now at 19 minutes to 8, the new Prime Minister, Bill English. Good morning.
Good morning.
Congratulations on the new job.
Thanks very much.
Let's talk firstly about Pike River. We were just speaking to our reporter with the protesters a few minutes ago. You're not going to be able to meet the families today, so when is that something that can be achieved?
Well, look, I'm not exactly sure when that can be achieved. I ran into Bernie Monk on the way to this interview, who I've know apart from Pike River, and indicated to him that I'm willing to meet with the families, but I think they're clear about the statement I made yesterday that it's not a political decision as to whether that mine is safe. It's a technical decision.
Indeed, but now owned by Solid Energy. So how much of that does make it partly the government's problem?
Well, it doesn't change the nature of the mine, which is a place where there was such a bad explosion that 29 people were killed and no one's been in there since. So it doesn't really matter who owns it. They've got to assess the safety before you put other lives at risk.
6 years, though, since the tragedy. This is becoming a festering sore, isn't it? And it's got to be dealt with.
Well, look, it is a tragedy, and a tragedy for the families, and that's why I'm willing to make arrangements to meet them at some stage.
OK, and so you would hope to make some sort of progress, presumably, if you're willing to meet them?
Well, I wouldn't want to mislead them or anybody that the fundamentals of the situation can change. I mean, this is very distressed people. I've been dealing with the previous Prime Minister. I'm willing to meet with them to have the discussion they want to have. But everyone needs to be clear what the underlying issue is around the safety of the mine.
Let's talk also about child poverty. We heard from Judge Andrew Beecroft earlier on this morning on the programme. Is the situation with poverty stagnating in New Zealand, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, look, there's two ways to work, particularly with the persistent hardship. One is just increasing incomes, and I know the Children's Commission and others are advocates of that. The government took a step in that direction last year with the hardship package, $25 a week for all families on a benefit. First increase in 40 years, and the other is dealing with the complex circumstances that keep families in low incomes for a long time. Many of them can handle it for a short time, but persistent deprivation is what creates that hardship. And that's, from all the work we've done in recent years, this combination of welfare dependency, often criminal offending, family violence, low education levels, and that's a long-term project that has to be done family by family.
You were the first finance minister in a very long time to put more money in people's pockets. Are you pledging to do that again?
Well, look, I've indicated we want to see the benefits of a growing economy widely shared. There will be the opportunity to raise incomes. There's a number of different ways of approaching that, and those are decisions we'll look at over the next 6 months.
But you can't at this stage rule out, for example, in the budget, there being more money being put in people's pockets?
Well, look, I'm not going to rule anything in or anything out. There's been quite a lot of discussion about tax cuts. That's one tool. There's a number of others. OK, so is it fair to say that that's something that will be happening in some form? Well, look, we'll just have to wait and see. You never quite know in the census risks for the government's books. We just had the Kaikoura earthquake, which is going to take $1 billion out of the budget just this year, and maybe the same again next year. Slowdown in the Australian economy. You've got to keep these risks in mind. OK. If we can also talk just briefly about the super fund. We were talking to Andrew Little a few minutes ago on the programme as well, and he was talking about contributions to the super fund, and again you've changed the stance perhaps that National's taken on the super age. Are you going to be resuming contributions? Well, we've got a formula in place there now. One of our top priorities is to get government debt down. We've run it up when times were tough. Now times are better. We need to be getting it down. It is starting to drop as a proportion of the economy. And when we get to 20% of GDP, then, which is another 3 or 4 years away, we'd be, at the moment, that's the policy, to make contributions then. But are you signalling by saying you're not necessarily bound to the same stance that John Key had on the age of 65? Is that something that is going to have to be looked at again should that age change? Well, that's ahead of us. All I've said is I'm not making the same pledge as John Key made, which was, I think, important at the time. There was a lot of concern among older people, and because he said, if it changes, I'll resign, they could see that even though we had a recession and an earthquake, national super was still going to be maintained. In fact, it's increased at double the rate of inflation pretty much over the last 7 or 8 years. So I'm not making that resignation pledge, but we haven't made any consideration about whether the age should change or not.
Now, the reshuffle is something that's coming up, I think, in the next few days, you've been signalling. Are you going to be putting friendships, for example, with Nick Smith aside when you do that?
Well, that's the task of a Prime Minister. I've worked with a lot of our ministers, in fact, all of them, the whole time they've been ministers in this government. So I had a pretty good idea of their capacities and competence. And the reshuffle will be shaped around the skill sets that we need, and carrying the government through to 2017. It's not going to be around change for the sake of change, because bear in mind this is a cabinet team that have actually delivered pretty well for New Zealand. It's got good public support, and we wouldn't want to throw away the things that work.
So does that mean that Nick Smith is likely to stay?
Oh, look, I'm not going to prejudge that. I think that the people have grossly oversimplified the housing issues that Nick and others have had to deal with. Auckland Council actually make the most significant decisions about housing in New Zealand, and he's done a great job of a very complex task. And
just finally, I suppose, what is it like looking out the window from the 9th floor of the Beehive? Good for you?
Well, I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but we'll be up there today. But look, I think going into that office is just a reminder both of the enormous privilege of the office, the opportunity that goes with it, and the responsibility to New Zealand to do a good job.
Thank you very much for your time today, Bill English, the Prime Minister. It's 12 minutes to 8.